Holy guacamole, that was a wild weekend of college wrestling. And if you are a regular here at TrueTan Wrestling, you know we love some wild fun mixed in with our wrestling. Now I'm not going to waste anyone's time because you all know I could sit here for hours and talk about every 9 seed who upset an 8 seed, but I think after a while that would get pretty old, but trust me, I want to talk about it. What we are really going to do is dive into every college wrestling conference and talk about the massive, and by massive I mean world-destroying upsets that made wrestling fans go, how did this happen? But overall, I'll cover some of the bigger upsets in every conference with some honorable mentions scattered throughout. Some conferences might get some more love over others, but that's just the way she goes. Also, this video is not detailing every single conference champ and how they look during each match. This video is only to detail those underdogs that got those massive upsets. If that video idea sounds interesting to you, be sure to stick around obviously, but also smash those like and subscribe buttons along with leaving a comment if there's anything I missed throughout the video. Now stop wasting everyone's time and jump into this massive conference recap highlighting these underdogs. Let's start out west with the Pac-12, where I really don't have too much to say because most of the 1 seeds did their job, and if they did lose, it was hardly an upset. For example, Jesse Vasquez of Arizona State seemed back to form after missing some time during the season and taking out the 1 seed Cleveland Belton of Oregon State to win himself a Pac-12 title. With that said, props to Arizona State. It seemed like the second I made a video about them having a shaky season, they started really rolling towards a better performing team. And honestly, it all topped off at Pac-12s with no one really being even close to them. They had 5 champions and 8 of their 10 guys were in the finals, which is way easier said than done even in the Pac-12. On that note, my pick to win the conference, Oregon State, finished in 3rd, right behind Little Rock, who will have a pretty nice squad at NCAAs, honestly. I also felt Oregon State had a much different squad than they started with this season, but I'm pretty confident they'll continue to climb in years to come. Finally, we'll talk about everyone's must-watch weight, 125, with Richie Figueroa of Arizona State taking home the title, winning 4-1 in sudden victory in the semifinals and 2-1 in the finals. I don't even want to know where they're going to see Kaylor, Provo, and Figueroa because they've all had amazing moments this season with great wins, but they also have some terrible moments as well, so we'll see. Moving to our other 6-team conference, we have the ACC, where NC State kind of just ran away with it with 7 ACC champs and 8 finalists, keeping that ACC trophy down in Raleigh. I got a few things to say about the ACC, but to be honest, there weren't too many huge upsets, but for sure some amazing wrestling packed in there. For starters, we saw Bryce Andonian take the mat again, and he finished in 3rd place. He got smashed by Ed Scott in the semifinals, and I honestly think Scott is starting to figure out Andonian. I imagine the game plan goes like this. Hey, Ed Scott, don't get caught up in the crazy moves and score off of them, which is a lot easier to say than to go out and execute, but clearly Ed Scott has it down. 165 was a total upset fest, but when you look at it from a glance, you could totally see that happening. Brady beat Holden Heller, the 2 seed, and Hamilton of Virginia beat Fields, the 1 seed from NC State, for them both to make the finals before Hamilton would pour it on late to deny Connor Brady another ACC title. To be totally honest, I thought Brady was going to win this match on grit alone because that's really how it was looking early on, but then Hamilton got some late and strong takedowns and strung them together to win the ACC title, and he looked pretty dangerous doing it. Then I'd be a fool not to mention 149, with Arrington finally taking out Henson in the final match of the tournament. This match was pretty gritty from start to finish, and Arrington just got it done this time with them now splitting during the year. And to be honest, I have no idea how they're going to see this weight during the bracket show on Wednesday. I feel like it could go about 100 different ways at 149 between the top 6 to 8 guys, so that'll be fun to find out, I guess. Now before we dive into the Big 10, Big 12, and EIWAs, let's stay on the East Coast with the SoCon, and then we'll jump up to the MAC tournament as well. To be honest, I thought the SoCon was pretty wild. Also, considering they only get about 1 or 2 out per weight, it really added on to the fun. Except for 133, that actually got 3 auto qualifiers out, which I can't remember the last time the SoCon got more than 2 out per weight. On that note, shout out to VMI for getting a wrestler out at 133. I will always root for those underdogs fighting for a qualifier year over year, so awesome for VMI. At 184, there was pure chaos with Gardner Webb star Anderson getting pinned round 1 by Presbyterian's only placer Rowe. He actually pinned him in the first period, so it was pretty shocking. Anderson would come back to take third, defeating Rowe in the third place match. On top of all that, at 184, Brooker of App State took out Campbell's heavy hitter Caleb Hopkins in the finals, which I for sure didn't pick. On that note, shout out to App State for battling tough and winning the SoCon once again. I don't even know why I pick against App State every year because they always find a way to get it done here. Also, I know this conference is dominated by Campbell and App State, but for some reason this year it really seemed like the other schools are really starting to get competitive as well. No one was really close to the other 2 schools, but I could see this conference getting a lot more competitive between these smaller schools really soon, so shout out to the SoCon. I also can't forget to mention the chaos at 125 where my picks to make the finals were actually going for third due to Gardner Webb's 125 West taking out Moulton of Campbell in the semifinals. Then Palmer of Chattanooga would win the 125 bracket after being App State wrestler Bellis, who smashed him twice this year, so really didn't see that coming. So yeah, overall, out of all the conference weights, I can't believe I'm saying this, 125 in the SoCon was the wildest, which is even crazier to think because they were pretty consistent all year compared to all the other drama at the weight, but it was just a matter of time before the 125 curse made its way down to the SoCon. And yes, we'll cover it. I know you're all thinking the Big Ten was definitely more wild than the SoCon at 125, but I think we all can agree in the Big Ten it was kind of expected there was going to be madness, but no one was thinking the SoCon was going to get messed up. Now in my last video, I talked about the MAC always being an upset fest, but this year was pretty tame. I was also way off on my conference champ pick, so let's just go on to congratulating Central Michigan for pretty much controlling the tournament the whole time. The only real upset alerts here that I really want to talk about is shout out to George Mason's 2 upset kids. The first being 184 Duvall being the 3, 2, and 1 seeds to win a MAC title. Then at 165, MAG pinned a top 15 ranked wrestler Thompson of Ohio in the finals, which was absolutely wild. Then we have the biggest conference in wrestling, the EIWA, that always has bracket busters up and down the brackets. But before we get into those, let's talk about this 133 final. For starters, I thought Vito looked okay all tournament, and then he looked pretty elite in the finals, to be honest, until he had that knee injury, which no one really wants to see. I honestly just hope Vito will be alright for the upcoming weeks and for his Olympic aspirations. Then in the world of upsets, Vince Cornella lost to Bucknell wrestler Chappell, who would make the finals as the 7th seed, and Cornella would unfortunately medical forfeit out of the tournament. So I hope he is also feeling alright for Cornell. It was also cool to see the host team get 2 upset kids in the finals, one being Chappell and the other being Crosby in the heavyweight final. Let's jump to 174 with Baker of Cornell busting the bracket in the quarterfinals, upsetting the 1 seed Conigliere of Harvard. However, Harvard did have an upset kid of their own in the 6th seed of Crook at 149, making the finals. He would get smashed by Fernandez of Cornell, who isn't really talked about a lot in my opinion, but I thought he looked super tough here. Maybe a sleeper pick to All-American a week and a half or so at NCAAs. Also on that note, I'll be at NCAAs this year, just as a fan, not really doing media stuff for TrueTan, but if you want me to cover NCAAs in any specific way, please feel free to leave it in the comment section below. But let's wrap up EIWAs first. Foca still can't beat Azaroff of Columbia, who went on to win EIWAs. Also, shout out to Columbia for getting a few champs here actually. The Azaroff thing though, over Foca just not being able to beat him really puzzles me. Like for example, I truly think Foca can make the NCAA finals unless Azaroff is on his side of the bracket. It just really proves wrestling's a matchup game at the end of the day. Now, as we move into the Big 12, there is a lot I could talk about, but I really only picked the big notes. For starters, of course, 125 was a lot of fun. Folk was just a bad dude for Wyoming all weekend, trailing in his semifinal and finals match, but he just found a way to become a Big 12 champion. To show how wild and honestly even 125 is, the returning champ Steve Poland of Northern Colorado placed 7th, which is just wild. Speaking of Northern Colorado, Vinny Zurban, the number 2 ranked guy in the country, did not get an auto qualifying spot. Vinny Zurban came in as the 1 seed, and even though he was kind of unknown coming into this to most people, I thought he looked super off compared to, for example, his Southern Scuffle performance. Maybe he was sick or a little injured or something, but I think he's better than 7th place at Big 12s. However, 157 is the deepest weight in the country for a reason, so that can happen from time to time. Finally, I have to talk about the bracket buster at 174, Sachs of North Dakota State, taking out the 2 and 3 seeds before losing to DeVos of South Dakota State in the finals. For those who don't know Sachs, he was a 149 2 years ago before bumping up to 174. My thought, he couldn't really beat Franek or Caliendo last year and couldn't make the weight anymore, so he said, I'm going 174. He had somewhat of a shaky season last year, but this year he really seems like he's filled into 174 and jumped a lot of levels, especially considering who he beat to make the finals this year, so I'm really excited to see how Sachs does at Nationals. Then of course this doesn't really fall in the realm of upsets, but it's definitely notable, and that is Carr versus O'Toole at 165. I think O'Toole's kind of separated the gap from Carr just a little bit. I don't really think Carr is out of the hunt to ever be Keegan O'Toole again, but I'm not really sure if it's going to happen this year, but crazier things have happened. Maybe we'll talk about it in the NCAA upset video. Also, I kind of wanted to talk about Peyton Mako because he just seems a little off this year. He made it to the semifinals of Big 12s where he was projected to make it before losing to DeVos, who usually has his number. But then after that, he would get majored by Gaitan of Iowa State and then get majored by Conley of West Virginia for 5th. Mako's had some odd results this season, so I hope he can return to form in a week and a half and potentially All-American again. Also, before we talk Big Tens, how fun was that Hendricks versus Bastida match for heavyweight? It was just bananas. It was just so much fun to watch. Of course, Big Tens was wild at 125. I mean, why wouldn't it be, right? I'm telling you, everybody, roll the dice on the 33C in a week and a half at NCAAs. For example, the semifinals at Big Ten was between the 9 versus 4 and the 6 versus 7. So if you know anything about brackets, only one of the quarterfinals went chalk. And then on top of all that, the 6 seed Brandon Davis of Penn State would win it all as a true freshman. There was almost too much madness at this weight to even really talk about. I mean, there was madness before we even got to the tournament. For example, the 7 seed D'Agostino was going to match up with Ayala, the 2 seed. And for Ayala to earn the 2 seed, it kind of stinks that he had to meet up with one of his only defeats from the season. Peterson, the 9 seed, obviously being the 8 seed, but then being the number 1 seed and number 1 wrestler in the country, Ramos, in the quarterfinals. Davis looking pretty off at the end of the Big Ten schedule to then go on and win the Big Ten tournament just shows he's peaking at the right time. And then if we get into the backside wrestling, oh my gosh, it's just a little too wild to talk about, so let's just move on. Shaver at 133 was just on a mission in his finals, beating one of the few people who's beat him this year, Ragusin of Michigan. Getting the tech fall at the end of the match, and Shaver just looks so slick, and he's really jumped levels from honestly the beginning of the season to now. On that note, shout out to Rutgers. They really had a nice tournament, to be honest, as well. Mendez took out Bartlett and Woods to win himself a Big Ten title, which is not a huge upset by any means, but definitely notable for sure. I don't even know how to describe 157 anymore in the Big Ten, but Luan would come out the opposite side of Haynes as the 7 seed, pinning Blockus, the 2 seed of Minnesota, who would unfortunately forfeit out of the tournament, and then beat Brayton Lee of Indiana, who literally just beat him a few weeks prior. Haynes would still stay on top of the conference though, beating Luan and winning his second Big Ten title. Actually his second title in overtime, to give you a little fun fact here. Then we have Mitchell Messenbrink and Dean Hamidy's crazy match that was just must-watch TV. And the fact that Messenbrink came back to win was just nuts, everybody. Like, Hamity wasn't dominating by any means, more just controlling the match really well and really shutting Messenbrink down. But the last second scramble really hurt Hamity, and Messenbrink proved himself for sure here. However, after seeing this match, I Don't really know if Messenbrick can beat O'Toole or even David Carr, to be honest. How about you all let me know in the comment section below if you think Mitchell Messenbrick can be a national champ this year. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Also, shout out to Chris Moore, the 11th seed for Illinois, for slipping into the top 6 at 165. Then to keep the Illini train rolling at 174, Edmund Ruth, the 4 seed, would win his bracket in the Big Ten. Granted, there was some medical forfeit and injury defaults scattered throughout, but Edmund Ruth is still a very high-level wrestler. In the finals, you would get a medical forfeit from Shane Griffith of Michigan, who got banged up in his semifinal match. Then, of course, there is the speculation around Carter Starocci that I'm sure you all want me to talk about. Yes, Carter Starocci injury defaulted out of his 2 matches at Big Tens. That's key to note because he was clearly there and clearly weighed in, which he would have had to have done anyway, but he did not medical forfeit out of the tournament. He physically went to the mat twice. I just think that's interesting because normally you don't see that a whole lot. Maybe it helps with the new medical forfeit rules, but I really don't think they're nervous about seeds. Overall, though, there's just a ton of rumors going around that I don't really know what to believe. Some say Starocci was ready to go and then Kale pulled him last second. Some say that's not true. Some say Starocci's just done. And yeah, I just don't really know where to go from here. It's almost like if you could combine the Nick Suriano situation with the Null situation and throw them into a blender, and that's kind of what we got now. I'm not really sure what's going to happen at NCAAs, and I don't really think we'll know until that Thursday morning session if he's going or not, so please let me know what you think in the comment section below. Also, while you're down there leaving a comment, feel free to hit those like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Overall, this was another awesome conference weekend in the books, and to be honest, that's all we can ask for. Some awesome wrestling with some interesting storylines scattered throughout. I really enjoyed conference weekend like I always do, so I hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble about it for these past few minutes. On that note, don't forget to check out my newest trailer highlighting my documentary covering the Penn State versus Ohio State rivalry during the 2018 season. That's set to release next Monday at 3 p.m. I believe March 18th it is, so I would really appreciate if you would go give that trailer some love and then obviously watch my documentary. Now with all that said, I thank you all very much for watching. Take care, everybody.